Good afternoon. In the absence of Treasurer Wagner, I will need from a board member to serve as Treasurer Pro Tem. Do I have any nominations? Dr. Moffitt? Good afternoon. In the absence of Treasurer Wagner, I will need from a board member.
So
We need to do it twice.
I'd like to nominate our standing board member Craig.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Crossett. Roll call, please.
Mr. Craig.
Yes.
Mr. Crossett. Yes. Ms. Mapp.
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt.
Yes.
Vice President Weinberg.
Yes.
President Bolton.
Yes, and thanks again, Chairman Craig. Interim Superintendent Murphy, please introduce our students that will be providing our Pledge of Allegiance today, and I think we should all get ready to stand.
My pleasure. Today, the students we have are coming from Robert A. Taft Information Technology High School, where Principal Akita Barrow is the principal.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very, very much. Seeing a quorum of voting members, I call the December 2nd Cincinnati School Board Special Public Meeting to order. Mike, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Craig.
Here.
Mr. Crossett. Here. Mr. Lindy. Ms. Mapp.
Here.
Dr. Moffitt.
Here.
Vice President Weinberg.
Here.
And President Bolton.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And now I'll take a motion and a second to approve the agenda for the December 2nd business meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We have a tie for second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Craig.
Here. Or so, yes, sorry.
Mr. Crossett. Yes. Ms. Mapp.
Yes.
Dr. Moffitt. Vice President Weinberg.
Yes.
President Bolton.
Yes, thank you all. The afternoon's agenda is approved as posted and distributed. Madam Vice President, the chair is yours to please conduct the hearing of the public and also inform the public as to how they might participate virtually.
Absolutely. So yes, thank you. We are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and will address all comments to the presiding officer. If you are online, once a request to speak has been granted, you will be invited to enter. You should click on the camera icon to go interactive, provide your name, affiliation to the district, school community, topic, and your contact information if you would like a response to any questions that you may have. Please know that this request is consistent with board protocol, and we appreciate your help. In the unusual event that someone is not willing to follow this protocol, we reserve the right to end that person's time. Again, each person will have 2 minutes to speak. When the timer goes off, your time is up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. After speaking, if you're online, you'll briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. Finally, we ask that your public commentary be respectful of all listeners. And I'm going to begin by first asking Mr. Wilson, do we have any online speakers?
At this time, we do not.
Okay, so we're going to start with our in-person speakers for today. When I call your name, if you could come down to the seats, and then in the order, you can go ahead and get started. We have Casey Irwin, We have Cassie Neiman, Carmen Kelly, and Sandra Mitchell, and also Jacqueline Summer. So come on down in that order, so then you can go ahead and get started. And thank you all for being here this evening. Pretty good. Well, in a minute. All right, as you are making your way down to the seats, there are plenty of seats for everyone, and you can go ahead and get started. Yeah, it's you. You're first. All right, thank you.
My name is Casey Urban. I've been coming to you guys for the past month and a half of how I've been against this plan. To be honest with you, I normally have a speech, but I'm gonna try and wing it today. As you can see behind me, parents, students, and alum are all against the Phase 2 plan. We're just asking that in order for this to happen, you've had plenty of proposals put in front of you of different ideas for the Phase 2 plan. I've come to you about the transportation issues. I've come to you with the safety issues about it, that how everyone is against this. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker.
Hi, my name is Cassie Neiman. I'm a parent at Clark Montessori. I have 2 kids who are also Clark alum. And I'm coming to you to tell you that we have a great ILT and LSDMC who are experts at our school. And I'm looking at you guys who are experts at schools in general, right? And so we need to come together. I would love to work with you. I would love for our experts to work with you guys as experts to come up with a plan for Cincinnati Montessori kids to get a secondary education in Montessori. This is something that makes Cincinnati really special, right? People come to Cincinnati for our public Montessori schools. How can our system be that if a school succeeds for 30 years, the next thing that happens is the district dismantles them? It feels like exploitation, right? We're working, we're volunteering, we're putting in the time, we're serving on the leadership teams. So let's come to the table. Let us have a seat at the table in deciding when we have a Montessori issue, like we have more kids than we have seats. Let's get Gamble, let's get Clark together. Let's bring our expertise together. We're better together. Let's work together and figure out a solution. Now, in the past, the district has said we can't afford to build another secondary Montessori school, and I'm here to say you can't afford not to. If we need this many seats, we need this many seats. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker. Yes, and then we should have Jacqueline, and there should be a Carmen as well. Down. Okay.
I'm
down.
sorry about that. I
there-
was just,
Hold on, before you start. Is there a Carmen? Okay, thank you.
hi, Sandra Jones Mitchell, how are you today? You know, I've read the plan, I've heard the noise, and I could tell you the community is very concerned. However, I think as a parent and alumni of Hughes High School, I want to be able to say, how can we help our parents and our kids do a better job in transitioning with the plans that you do have in place? I volunteer at South Avondale School, and I am very concerned with the level academics that these kids displaying. I could tell you these kids are struggling. So while we sitting here meeting about who's who, I want us to put more emphasis on helping our parents get better prepared to help their kids. It's our kids that are struggling in all these schools. I know that South Avondale School and Rockdale School, we're gonna be merging, but I don't think our kids are ready. I don't think the parents are ready. I look around this room, I don't see the parents that I represent with the Avondale Community Council. I don't see them. So I want to be able to do a better job in getting our parents here at the table, but also in the lives of our kids. It is so important. I can tell you, I struggled in high school. I had a hard time. I didn't have what these kids have today. We got to do a better job of making sure when we're making plans that we include our kids, that we include those parents and those grandparents that are struggling to make sure that our kids get the things that they need. I'm very concerned with the noise that I hear in our community. I know we went back and forth about how the superintendent was selected, and you know what, those issues, yeah, those are issues, but I'm gonna tell you, your bigger issues is our kids. It's our kids that are struggling, you guys. We gotta do a better job in getting them prepared for what's happening out there. They're not ready. They are not ready, and so I'm willing to volunteer my time. I'm willing to do whatever that's needed to help our kids, okay? Help our babies.
Thank you so much. And before our next speaker comes up, you can come on up. I'm going to call a couple more names. Natalie Coyle, Reverend Dr. I think it's Lauren. Thank you. You can help me out when you come down. And then Naomi Larson. All right, you can go ahead and start.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Summer, so just small background. I have with my children have gone through Sands Montessori. One is currently actively a 5th grader. I have a 8th grader currently at Clark Montessori. My ex-husband was a Montessori student at Mercy Montessori, which, while not part of CPS, is part of the Montessori trained education. My former mother-in-law was the principal over at Sands Montessori when it was in the West End. My children are genetically bred to be Montessori students. We live, eat, and breathe Montessori, from having the cylinders as part of their daily lives and activities to building strong community leaders. To back up, I'm kind of trying to make sure I go through this process very carefully. I am also while not Montessori trained, I am in my 17th year as being a high school educator, and have worked for CPS as a resource coordinator at Silverton Paideia. Okay, so it's setting the table for that one. We went through the process as a district and fanfared the Montessori accreditation process, which is not easily obtained. Okay, fair. The Montessori educational process requires that these age bands be brought together. In order for Montessori curriculum to be effective, to have a true Montessori education, the way we believe in Walnut, we also need to believe in the secondary opportunities and what that does for our students who choose, and our families who choose, the Montessori pathway. Okay, that is a viable option. The second point comes to concern is transportation. We cannot effectively, if we remember the beginning of the school year and the amount of, I could go on for a while, but.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Somehow I talk in front of 50 of them every day, and this is totally different, so I'm gonna do my best. Natalie Coyle, Clark Montessori teacher of 17 years. I'm here to ask you to reconsider dividing the Clark Montessori community into 2 separate schools. If you were lucky enough to attend our 30th anniversary celebration last month, you would have seen firsthand the importance of community and diversity to our school. The value is at the core of our philosophy. We work to intentionally build community across the 6 years of our program. Not only does this build relationships, but allows for the academic, social, and emotional development of the child across the 12 to 18-year-old plane of development. Providing a multi-age environment is at the heart of how our program was designed 30 years ago, and followed this model for years before the district made the shift to 7 to 12 schools. Furthermore, as educators, we know that transitions are difficult for students and families. Adding a second transition adds a challenge for struggling learners, undermines the consistency of a program that smoothly flows from junior high to high school. At Clark, we have been lucky enough to see the benefits of minimal transitions between grade levels. The vertical growth of our students without a slide back in 9th grade is testament to that consistency and another reason to keep our schools together. We have long been a diverse, successful, and sought-after school in Cincinnati Public. We provide an option for families who may otherwise choose private schools. We provide an opportunity for families who don't have the means to choose private. With the split of our school, not only may that impact how many families choose Clark, it may impact our Montessori accreditation. Keeping our accreditation and following a 6-year model that is recommended by AMS is important to our staff and families. We hope that you can consider some of the other plans and options for growth that do not undermine a successful school and community. Don't break it apart. It's working, and it's important to our staff, families, and community.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker.
Hi there, Reverend Dr. Lauren Halad. Oh, am I good?
You're good.
Reverend Dr. Lauren Halad, I serve as senior pastor at Good Shepherd Lutheran in Kenwood, Ohio, here to speak in advocacy for Taft Elementary School. Many of you may be aware that Good Shepherd, this congregation in Kenwood, has had a 10-year partnership at Taft Elementary. It's a part of our core conviction that we are better and stronger together. We have hundreds and hundreds of our people connected all over the tri-state region that have passionately served at the elementary. Through the Adopt a Class program, we have helped champion a food pantry through the Free Store Food Bank in the school. We provide busing and field trips for the school, all out of the love from this congregation in Kenwood. Taft Elementary has come together. They have a plan, or a proposal rather, to consider being a central hub Montessori school. They already share resources and busing with a local charter school. The school facilities have a recreation facility, a pool in the building. We want Taft Elementary to thrive and those families and students to continue to be served. I think this is a model for what needs to happen throughout Cincinnati, where faith communities, partnerships come together. In my congregation in Kenwood, I have people in the C-suites of every great Cincinnati company. The president and CEO of the Free Store Food Bank is a worshiping member of my church. We have legal officers from Procter & Gamble. We have people connected with Children's Hospital. Our congregation wants to support your work and wants to continue to support Taft Elementary School. Somehow, we need to make sure that Taft Elementary, whether Montessori or public school, continues to serve Greater Cincinnati and students that are at a critical juncture that need help. Communities like Kenwood, Indian Hill, Madeira, East Side communities care about our inner ring schools and students. Let us be a part of your plan and continue to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker. And as our next speaker is coming to the microphone, I'm going to call down David Whitehead, Mona Jenkins, and Stefan Pryor. And are you Naomi?
Yes.
Okay, correct. Come on down to the mic or to the seats.
Hi, thank you. I'm Naomi Larson, and I'm the STEM teacher from Taft Elementary. I've been blessed to be there for 2 years, and I was at Rockdale for 4 years prior. He knows because he's seen us in action. We have an amazing community. I love both of my schools. I loved Rockdale. I was TACT or whatever out of there. And I was blessed to be landed in my job that I've always wanted, which is STEM. It was obvious when I came to Taft that these students were different, that they were using language, scientific terms, and just awareness that they had been exposed to science since a young age. That is rare. We know that our careers are not gonna look like things at desks anymore, okay? They're gonna be innovative. We have to have innovative students and prepare our children for the world that they're gonna go into. Dismantling a school that is a STEM school, and I know that you have to dismantle, I don't have your job, I don't have to deal with all the finances. However, I did get us a free $500 field trip to iSpace. We constantly partner with things with the church. We have children that are kindergartners that have known them and that are now sixth graders that have known them until then. We have people who are asking, when I get in fourth grade, can I make a video game? Can I join Bike Club and build my own bike that I'm gonna ride around this neighborhood? Yes, you can. If we're a school. We are an amazing family. This family doesn't want to be broken up, and we come every day and go above and beyond. And our students need us. We've had students who have left and come back because emotionally, they needed Taft. They didn't just need a school, they needed Taft. So please don't take apart this family who functions together well. We're willing to be flexible, and we want to be here for our students. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm also going to call down Lisa Klotz and I think it's Veda Manuel.
Good afternoon, David Whitehead, President-elect for the NAACP of Cincinnati. Today, my charge is to make sure that we are addressing the fact that our community is feeling as if we're disengaged from what is going on here. You may have had ad hoc meetings, you may have had different types of meetings during the daytime when people are at work. But in the evening time, when most of our parents, most of our community members need to hear what's going on, we haven't been talked to. We haven't been spoken to. We don't understand what the process is and why this process is taking place. I looked at the 56 pages that you have on your PowerPoint. There was no details in regards to how the effect would be academically on these changes. There was no details in regards to how the transportation would be affected by these changes. There was a lack of information in there. It was a great PowerPoint, a lot of great fluff. But we want details, we want information, we want to be partners. It appears as if our community is being treated as a customer opposed to a partner. And when you're paying taxpayer dollars, you are a partner. We're a partner in making sure that our students are getting the best education possible. So I'm asking you, one, we would like the executive summary of how that PowerPoint was created, because there has to be data behind this of why you're doing it. So let us have that executive summary so we can see and understand you may be doing the right thing, but no one knows it because we don't have the information. So we're going to ask for that. We're not here to say you're not doing your job. What we're saying is you're not communicating your job. And we need that communication given back to the community. And if you're not going to do that, then we need to think about somebody different.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Mona Jenkins, speaking as a taxpayer today. I feel like a broken record to constantly be asking that the community be a part of the decision-making process whenever anything takes place. Here we are discussing phase 2, and we still don't even have the data, the output from phase 1. And I know that there were problems that happened with phase 1 because I was getting calls regarding teachers and folks not having access to the buildings during the transition. So while it may seem as though things went smoothly, they did not. But the public has not even received that information yet, let alone with this proposal. What's the financial plan? You all are saying it's going to cost $200 million. We just spent the last year cutting $100 million and cutting the necessary resources that were directly going to some of our students. So where are we getting $200 million from? How is this really affecting our students, the community? Again, how we're building our neighborhoods is not in this plan. We're not included, community input. What's the output? What's the proposal? We could slow down and really dissect this before making any types of decisions. But I think that a task force needs to be created where all stakeholders are included in this instead of this a top-down approach. We need to look at this long-term. And I understand some changes need to happen, but include community folks, include the key stakeholders. Don't let this just be a one-time decision made and we're supposed to deal with it. We're tired of dealing with things. We want to be included in this process.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Kind of nervous up here. Okay, I'm playing. No, I ain't. I know what the data is. The data is the redistricting school software mapper tool. They do this all around the United States, redistricting schools. And then the lobbyists come in and talk to y'all guys and, make a deal with y'all, behind closed doors, Miss Eve. But that's what they do. So the problem of school redistricting is related to the political redistricting issue 1 that was on the ballot that failed. That was all a part of a game. So if that didn't fail, y'all wouldn't have did this. So I get the game, what's going on. So redrawing neighborhood school district boundaries to address these changes produce an equitable distribution of students among different schools in most Black communities, period. And new housing development, like down at Porter Hayes, they gonna get rid of that real soon. They teaming up with Rothenberg School. So what? The FC soccer stadium can make a parking over there too. So them the games what's going on in our schools, and that's what's being played. Y'all being the players at this trade of tricking people. Y'all gotta stop that, Ms. Ebo. You've been around so long. Girl, it's time for you to go, girl. You've been around too long. You was doing parties at Rothenberg School charging $100 a head on top of the rooftop back in the days. I remember that. They was drinking on top of the rooftop. I remember that. Y'all was charging parking, valet, and all that. I remember everything back in the days. Superintendent, I told you was going to be the next elected official without, I told you that when I sat back there with you because a lobbyist told me who they was going to pick. See, these the games what's going on in these school board meetings. We know y'all don't get paid a whole lot of money, but we know y'all get bags behind closed door. Bags mean money. Some of y'all do that, some of y'all don't. I know that for a fact. So we can get the money back. Help the... All right, I approve that message.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Hello, hi. Thank you guys for allowing me to come up here and speak. I am here on behalf of no one.
Pull your mic over just a little bit.
Yes. Okay. I am here on behalf of no one other than the children and the family of Hayes Porter. I have been working with children, especially behavioral children, for 14 years. I've been at Hayes going on 7 years this year. I actually left and got accepted into the police academy for Cincinnati. And my mother, who was adult director at Great Oaks, actually sat me down after a month of being in the academy. And she said, this is what you think your next chapter is, but your calling is with those kids. And I connect so well with my families, with my kids. And she said, your calling is at Hayes Porter, and it is working with those kids. And my first day back, after turning in my gun belt, I had a little one come up to me and was like, Miss Lisa, I don't eat paper anymore. And to me, that is my calling. This is my calling. And to have the news of Hayes Porter possibly being taken away, those kids consider that school a home. It is a safe place. They get meals, they get support, they get everything there. And to have that possibly ripped away from them with all the stuff that is going on in their community, in their house, Hayes Porter is a home, and we have to keep Hayes Porter. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Before we have our next speaker, can I have Kurt Grossman, Andrew Kaplan, and then Alexis Kidd, I think it's Zaffer or Zaffer?
To the vice chair.
What's the last name? Yes.
We also have 2 online speakers that met
Okay,
the deadline.
we'll catch them at the end.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you so much. The mic is all yours.
Oh, okay, thank you. Vita Manuel, West End resident and grandmother. I should have put that first. I'm here for Porter Hayes, as well as Rothenberg, 2 very outstanding programs. Porter Hayes happened to make it first, as far as national recognition. Good job. Okay, Rothenberg will be a couple of years later, just patting us on the back. Knowing that these programs are necessary, and as she reiterated, it's home. I mean, I don't see the difference of you trying to mesh schools together when children can walk to school. There's something about knowing your school's across the street as opposed to getting on the bus, waking up 5:30 in the morning, have to be out at the bus stop at 6:15, get on the bus at 6:30, knowing your school doesn't start till 9 o'clock, God knows where you're going, either the west side or the east side, and you think education-wise or whatever, that's gonna work. But you tell children they need sleep, they need rest. Your mind should be still. You need to be at a Zen place when you're learning. We're trying to get this mindfulness thing together. And all I see is chaos. But you expect a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 8, 10, 12-year-old to deal with that. Adults can't deal with that kind of chaos, let alone a child. So it just doesn't make sense to close Porter Hayes. Join with Rothenberg. They have their own educational program that's up and coming. Let's just stop. As earlier said, stop and think about the kids. That's all I got to say.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker. You can come to the mic.
Thank you. My name is Kurt Grossman. I live downtown. I pay CPS school taxes, a lot of them, and I'm a volunteer reading literacy tutor at Hayes Porter. The board is considering closing Hayes Porter and moving students to Rothenberg to close a financial budget gap. This will sacrifice the learning process for the students and places money over their well-being. Hayes Porter has a strong administration and volunteer staff, which has elevated Hayes Porter to a 4-star school. Rothenberger is an older, outdated facility with little parking for staff, much less the dozens of tutors and other volunteers who regularly come to Hayes Porter. How many of our kids will be pushed to vouchers if they are pushed into Rothenberg? The first listed goal for CPS is 3rd grade reading proficiency. Hayes Porter excels because it has a devoted staff and we tutors who make that happen. It would be better actually to expand preschool at Hayes Porter. By some reports, there are about 200 kids in that neighborhood who need it, yet we have one class of 20. That's a failure on your part. The part of the community, you say we are full partners and decision makers, and that every student is valued. I ask you to prove it. I implore you to put the Hayes Porter students first before budgets. Short-sighted budgetary decisions like closing Hayes Porter will further aggravate a challenging environment for the neighborhood kids and in the long term, diminish the quality of education in CPS. Our tax dollars demand better of you, and you know the tutors will not make it to Rothenberg. We'll kill these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker. I think Andrew is next.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Andy Kaplan. I'm a retired attorney from the law firm of Ori, Sater, Seymour, and Pease, retired 5 years ago. And I'm most proud to say that I am a volunteer tutor in reading at Hayes Porter Elementary School. Hayes Porter is a wonderful place to go. It's a wonderful place to bring other potential volunteer tutors. We built a group there, and every time I bring someone into the school, the reaction is, boy, this is beautiful. Look at this school. The floors are sparkling, the halls are bright, the corridors are quiet, except when you're hearing the music in the music room and the kids are singing or playing their violins. We have a quiet library where we work, and you will see from the Voorhees tutor team, which we've built up over all of these years, groups of 8 or 9 pairs of students almost every day sitting at desks working on literacy. We tutor the students we tutor in all of the aspects of reading, I should say, and that certainly includes fluency. And one of the areas in which fluency has improved greatly and that we can see as tutors is we start with kids who maybe read 40 words a minute, and by the time they're leaving in 6th grade and moving on to 7th grade, they're reading 200 plus words a minute in many cases. And that's a wonderful thing. They're ready to start 7th grade. I think what we're all here about is to do what's best for the students in the end. I understand that there's a space utilization issue at Hayes Porter. Seems to me that when you have a successful school like that, you don't kill it. You don't say, I'm going to.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Our next speaker.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. My name is Alexis Kidd-Zafer. I am the executive director of Seven Hills Neighborhood Houses. I will try not to feel triggered because the last time I was here, it was an FC decision by the board. CPS has made a lot of decisions in the West End that have long-standing consequences. The closing of Heberly School, the closing of Bloom, the stripping away of Sands Montessori from the West End, and now the ending of potentially Hayes Porter. The West End has been traumatized enough by our city and by CPS. You are a direct causation of a lot of areas that have seen decline. If you drive past Heberly School, if you drive past Bloom School, those were thriving. There were residents that lived there. There were businesses that were thriving. When the schools died and you sold those buildings for $60,000 apiece and had no accountability on those, that killed the area. I worked there. I used to work for CPS, so I understand the consequences when schools leave areas. Hayes Porter is thriving. They have better scores right now for 3rd grade reading than they do at Hyde Park. 79% of our 3rd graders are reading at proficiency. What CPS has got to stop doing is closing successful models. There's a book called Root Shock. It says, leave things alone for 5 years and things will get gradually better. You all continue to tamper with things that are improving, and instead of expounding upon it, you continue to kill it. Stop killing it. Do not kill Hayes Porter School. Allow Hayes Porter to thrive. Put preschool in there. Bring your partners in there. There are other solutions to cover these costs. I'm willing to meet with you all. I also sent an email to you all earlier today about my board member who could not make it this evening, Yvette Simpson, who would love to have a conversation, and we also want to be included in conversation. Hayes Porter was not included in those emails in that list of partners. It wasn't until our principal, West, that contacted you all that asked to meet with our LSTMC. We were not even given the courtesy of a meeting, and there are even community council members I don't agree with, but they even agree with me. We need you all to stand up for the West End. Do not disengage. Do not disinvest. It's time to reinvest, reinforce your investment, reinvest your passion for our children who are being successful, who need these nurturing environments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we go to our online speaker, I just wanted to make sure Carmen Kelly is here, not here? Yes, come on down. And then we'll go to the online speakers.
Good evening, members of school board, facility, and community members. My name is Carmen. I am a freshman at Clark Montessori. I stand before you today speaking against the proposal to remove the junior high from our Clark Montessori buildings. The Montessori approach is built on fostering independence, responsibility, and a strong sense of community, all which are enhanced by the way it is now and the way it has been for 30 years. Clark has some very unique teachers and concepts that are taught within Clark, such as our steel band class. Steel band is offered for both junior high and high school. Our band teacher is widely known and loved throughout the school, as well as our gym teacher. It is almost like a rite of passage to have a class with our gym teacher, Mr. Ames. One of the things Clark is most known for is its grand trip to Andros. It is a tradition that high schoolers come down to speak to the junior high about Andros and get them excited for the trip. Then again at the end of the year, to get them excited for high school and give them advice for their own high school years. Being within an environment with high schoolers and its atmosphere for me made the anxiety of high school less intense. Being in the same building with the junior high has allowed me to keep my friendships with those I know who are still in junior high, and has allowed me to introduce my junior high friends to other older high schoolers. I urge the board to consider the long-term impact of this decision. Let's not take away a model that fosters connection, independence, and community. I ask you to reconsider and keep the junior high where it belongs, in the heart of our Clark Montessori building. My apologies for not being able to be here the first time my name was called. My brother attends Sands Montessori, and they didn't get out till 3:40. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we will go to our online speakers. And I will let you handle that, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Our first speaker today is going to be Zoe Harvey. Zoe, you can unmute your camera and microphone and begin.
Hello, my name is Zoe Harvey. I'm a teacher for the deaf at Woodford Academy. I'm here again, because we keep showing up, to support Woodford and to also continue to support my students. Woodford Academy has been a fantastic school to work at. I've been here my entire education career. And they have always been, it's always been a place where my kids feel like they belong. There's classmates that learn how to sign with them. We have an ASL class. Our kids don't feel alienated. They're not the only one deaf kid in a building at Woodford. We have so many great support systems here, interpreting, a continuum of services from pre-K to 6th grade. Our kids get to work with other deaf adults. It truly is this special little place within CPS. And so as much as I want Woodford to stay together, I also don't know what you have put in this plan of yours that has been kind of secretive, and we might do this, we might not do this, and you haven't really given us a straight answer. So we've been coming week after week, board meeting after board meeting, waiting. Since I don't know what is going to happen for my students, all I can say and ask you is that they get to stay together, that our pre-K to 6th deaf and hard of hearing program stays together, and that it does not get split apart. Because if it does, you will lose students. I can tell you right now, if the program disbands, I will make sure that my parents know that I think their kids should go elsewhere, because they will flounder, they will fail. Being the one deaf kid in a building will destroy their mental health, and it will destroy their academic and language growth. So all I can hope is that you keep us together and that you make the correct decision. And lastly, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Moffat for coming, for being one of the only board members to come and actually see our autism in our deaf units. So thank you.
So much.
Thank you. Our next and last online speaker is Gretchen Bayer. Gretchen, you can unmute your camera and microphone. Thank you.
Hi, okay, here we go. 1 second. Uh-oh. Am I there? No.
We don't see your face, we just see your name.
Oh, okay, hold. Okay, there I
Yeah.
am. Hi. Sorry about that. I'm Gretchen Bayer. I hold a few titles or hats in CPS. I am a parent of a 6th grade Sands Montessori student. I was a Sands Montessori student. My brothers were Sands Montessori students and they went on to Clark. I was too old to go to Clark, so I went to a different school. But my 6th grader will be going to 7th grade next year. And so that's one of my hats. He was automatically put into the lottery for Clark Montessori because we live on the east side. And I accepted his position, but I'm confused because I'm not sure where he's going to go. And if Clark does not stay Clark, then we'll find a different school for him, because the most important thing to me is stability for students. And as a parent, and as a teacher, I see that as being very important. Ironically, I'm a teacher at Woodford, so it makes it kind of very ironic for me, because Woodford is the school that, you've suggested that maybe will be 7th and 8th grade Montessori. So I know for a fact I would not send him to 7th and 8th grade Montessori at Woodford. I would send him somewhere else for stability. On the same note, I'm an autism teacher. I came to Woodford 8 years ago, and when we started, there was one other autism unit. I took over the preschool disability class. We became an autism preschool, and the program has grown like no other. It is a magical place. So similar to Zoe, my first plea is for us to all stay together, pre-K through 6th autism. But what you haven't really talked about is the growth that Woodford is making. Our numbers are growing. We are not under capacity. I mean, we are under capacity, but we're growing. And I bet if you give us more time, we will be at capacity when we need to be next year or the year after. So please help us. Please save us. Thank you.
We are done with hearing of the public. I'd like to thank all of our speakers and thank you all for coming out this evening.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thanks for all the folks that participated tonight. We'll start the rest of the agenda on old business, and our topic for old business this afternoon will be updates on the growth and sustainability plan. Interim Superintendent, would you like to begin?
Thank you. Yes, I would. I was asked to bring back some updates in terms of where we are, what we've covered, and what we would like the board to consider moving forward as it relates to our growth and sustainability plan. So, Rob, on the next slide, you'll see just where we started with the ad hoc resolution directives from March 18th, 2024. There were 5 directives at that time. You can see 4 of the 5 we believe we are covering with this growth plan. The third one, we have a P by it, which means we partially feel that that has been addressed because of transportation and this corridor model, and depending on where the board lands with those kinds of decisions. And then on the next slide, there were several resolutions that also came out of that work. And again, one of the areas that we feel is partially addressed in this plan includes work around the west corridor and looking at those boundaries and the amount of growth or concentrated students on the west side of town and how to best address those economic and neighborhood lines. So on the next slide, we begin with the objective and the mission, and that is looking at our neighborhoods, valuing our neighborhoods, and aligning our communities with the growth that we're finding in neighborhoods. And the next slide talks about continued work around creating and establishing junior highs and middle schools as a result of the ad hoc work and previous board discussion, creating a corridor system in our school district that includes citywide west and east geographic divisions that also incorporate north to south boundaries. On the next slide, Rob, this is a response to problems that we feel we are solving for, an area that is new on this slide that the board has not seen. We have been approached by Don Community Schools, and we'll have a conversation with them on December the 18th. There is some potential that Don School may close due to some changes in their leadership, whether that closure comes this December or at the end of the 2024-2025 school year. We're not certain, but we have agreed to have a conversation with their leadership. The other piece that is new to you, for your knowledge, is we've also been approached by Xavier's Montessori Lab School. That is, for all intents and purposes, a private school with about 150 students. Xavier has announced that that school will be closing at the end of the 2024-2025 school year, and they have approached Cincinnati Public Schools about being able to submit a proposal of how we may be able to work together. So those two new pieces there. The next slide, you will see the impact around right sizing of our schoolhouses. We do have what we're calling underutilized buildings, and we have tried to emphasize not having commentary around how great our staff, our students are, or the accomplishments that they're making academically, socially, emotionally, but about how the buildings are being utilized. We're also trying to create equitable access to some of the curriculum and the programs that parents, that students have been asking for over the last several years. We're also trying to address the middle child's needs emotionally and academically. And we're looking at a particular growing aspect of our population. Our students experiencing homelessness continues to grow in our community, and we want to talk about services that we can continue to provide to them in order that they can come to school prepared, ready to learn, and be successful. On the next slide, you see several projected outcomes and highlights, including some of the programmatic pieces, including military expansion. We began, as you know, a junior ROTC program last school year at Aiken High School. We've had many of our high schools ask for that type of programming, and so we are looking at being able to expand our military junior ROTC option, for example. Our career and technical education pathways, this plan will allow that to grow, especially highlighting what the students have asked for in the areas of cosmetology, entrepreneurship in particular, and automotive technologies, and you see several other areas. The implementation timeline is on the next slide for you. You know that we began this work in the late spring, technically, with phase one. We began phase 2 in September, and this will show you the trajectory that we are on in terms of being on time with the assignment of schoolhouses, the teacher transfer rounds, our spring assessments, and any potential moves that we would want to make for the start of the 2025-2026 school year. On slide number 11, Rob, just so you can see a layout of where we see our schoolhouses and the closest recreational centers. We have been in conversation with our CRCs about further and deeper partnerships. We also already have several partnerships with them, but we do look forward to intensifying. We also list out for you on this slide and the next slide information around what OSBA, Ohio School Board Association, anticipates with the Ohio budget challenges around underutilized and underachieving schools. So that is also continued on page 12. Earlier today, there was a reference made to buildings that we sold, and you can see that history, those buildings that went to auction, where they were, what they sold for, and what we are trying to avoid. On the next slide, you'll see several slides that list what the engagement sessions have been. Always room for more and more and more continued conversation and deepened understanding, and we're up for that challenge. But to date, there's been 77 engagement sessions. The next slide on page 14 lists the schools that we have been talking about that probably will continue in this conversation, the various organizations, and some former board members that participated in former ad hoc committee meeting conversations that took place over the course of about an 18-month period of time. Since then, on the next slide, starting September 12th, you'll see the LSDMC meetings that have taken place to date. On the next slide, you will see parent meetings that have taken place, community council opportunities, the superintendent's growth virtual office hours that have taken place, and board meetings where these conversations have been held. On the next slide, slide 17, you'll see a list of principal meetings and instructional leadership team meetings that have taken place. On the next slide, we will go to slide number 20. Our rationale around this is our growth, our attendance, where we are, where we've been going ever since the pandemic, taking a pretty major dip, trying to come back up, leveling off just ever so slightly. But you see on the blue line our current enrollment with the goal of increasing enrollment by being able to provide the seats that are in demand and wanted by our students and families. We believe this plan allows us to create seats for students who are asking for particular seats. On the next slide, page 21, you've seen this slide, our proposal around the corridor system, a west, a central, and an east layering of schools. And these slides that are 22 and the next several show what our best proposal has been to you around how we feel these schools should be grouped or revisited in terms of creating junior high schools and or middle schools. And so you see the first slide, I won't go through all of them specifically because these are not new to you. There is on the Rising Star Vine Taft slide on page 24, the original proposal was that the RAP would be hosted at Rising Star Vine, but there has been a request about perhaps putting that at Taft Elementary and leaving the preschool students at Rising Star Vine. And then you heard earlier today, we recently learned of a request to consider Montessori starting centrally at William Howard Taft Elementary School. You'll see the pairing of Withrow, Evanston, Frederick Douglass, creating a 7th and 8th grade program, pulling from Withrow High School and assigning to the Evanston Academy building. On the next slide, you see the Hughes Woodward South Avondale, pulling 7th and 8th graders from Woodward Hughes, assigning them to South Avondale, keeping Rockdale as the elementary school, keeping schoolhouses in the Avondale community. Sailor Park is where we're looking at placing the new junior ROTC program, creating a schoolhouse that would be pre-K to 12, and also having them partner with Euler on some of the athletic programs that we have, and adding an early college opportunity at Sailor Park. The next combination is Aiken, Pleasant Hill, Winton Hills, and College Hill, where the Aiken 7th and 8th graders will be pooled and assigned to Pleasant Hill Academy, and that would convert to a middle school pre-K to 5, would be moved to College Hill Academy, and then returning the Winton Hills Academy pre-K to 5th grade students all to their neighborhood school, as opposed to going to other schools such as Pleasant Hill and Mount Airy. On the next slide, the proposal for Clark, Silverton, Woodford, John P. Parker includes, as you know, the 7th and 8th grade going to Woodford to create a 7th and 8th grade Clark. The rationale is having enough seats at the Montessori level to be able to accommodate all of the current 6th graders in our Montessori programs. Woodford Academy not having their magnet status, Silverton not having their magnet status, but the Woodford students merging with the Silverton students. On the next slide, you would see Hartwell, Rising Star, Carthage, and Bond Hill, where we're looking to move the Hartwell School to become a middle school, grades 5, 6, 7, 8. Carthage would have grades K to 4. Their preschool students would go to Bond Hill Academy, making Bond Hill Academy a pre-K to 6th grade building. Carson, we continue to look at the west side boundaries. We have begun to look into moving as further east, southeast at the Covedale level, but we're running into segments of streets where we don't have children, and so that has been a complicated task, but we continue to dig into how we can look at those boundaries.
Madam Superintendent, if
Yes,
I
ma'am.
could, we wanted to make sure that we got through, especially the clusters of schools, because of the audience that we have here tonight. And rather than try to go through all of it and then start the discussion, if it would please you, if the board members could ask questions of the material you've thus presented, all of which has been presented before, some once or twice before. But if we can take a pause here, we'll bleed into new business and not wait for the whole presentation to be over before we start a discussion, if that would please you. And I think there's an interest among the audience too to dwell a little bit longer on all of the school clusters that we just ended with for obvious reasons, rather than some of the earlier slides. So we're going to start with any board members that would like to ask some questions or stress some concerns. I do want us to save time as a board, because I'll need some direction and advice regarding, as we do approach votes on December 9th, I want to make sure we have enough time to have input as to how we might want to do that. I know there's been some discussion about how we are going to proceed, so I do want to have time at the end of our meeting to talk about that. But right now, questions, comments, thoughts by board members regarding any slides that the superintendent has brought forth, or we don't usually do this, but if there's been some questions or issues raised from the audience today on specific issues, we could certainly have the opportunity for the superintendent or board members to respond to some of that as well. But questions, comments, if that pleases board members, Vice President, and then we'll go over to Dr. Moffitt.
Oh, sure. So thank you, Superintendent, for the slides. And as you are going through the slides, just kind of slowing down just a little bit so that everyone can get the information. So something was raised in hearing of the public. I think someone brought up, and this is a concern for me as well, and a question in terms of if you're able to get the information back to us. But regarding slide 22 and slide 23, I think for me, you came up with some reasoning of your rationales. You stated the rationales included right-sizing, curriculum pathways, middle child's needs, wraparound services, et cetera. But I think for me, what I would like to know in terms of the Western Hills High School and how you're wanting to keep that 9th through 12th and then take 7th through 8th at Ethel Taylor, what would be your academic reasoning behind that in terms of their scores, reading and math, and then seeing how that would relate to what would be the plan moving forward to really hone in on those skills for those 7th and 8th graders. And the same would be for Hayes, Porter, and Rothenberg. You're talking of a consolidation, but what's the academic rationale behind that? Are our 3rd graders scores down? Are the 4th grade scores down? Just, I think we need to see that, and that can kind of help provide a little bit more of some understanding.
The rationale for Hayes Rothenberg is simply the number of students in the school and being able to fiscally be able to continue with the schools in place as they are. Concern there.
So you're saying for that particular school, those 2 schools, there's not an academic?
There's
the sizing?
It's the sizing,
Okay.
yes. Just about the same could be held true for all of these. If you go back to looking at West High and the capacity of West High, it is over capacity. And then we have schools that are under capacity, almost to the 20-30% of capacity, and the high schools over 100%. And so trying to right-size those as best as possible. I don't want to say this has anything to do with their academic status, all right? This is no commentary on the staff, the students themselves. This is really about the number, the efficiencies, and being able to head into this budget season and being able to do things as fiscally sound as possible.
And I appreciate that answer, but moving forward, so if you are proposing as a proposal 7th and 8th grade at Ethel Taylor, what would be the academic plan for those particular students? We're pulling them away from that 9th through 12th, where you notice that their scores are down. What would be the goal to bring those scores up to make that an important, I guess, move for the 7th and 8th graders?
Sure.
That would be what I would be interested in hearing a little bit more on.
So what we are finding in our research around working with that middle child, that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade child, having them in a K-8 building can be somewhat problematic because they're a little bit too old for that primary elementary treatment, and at the same time not quite ready for that high school freedom that they often find. And so being able to concentrate those young people together in a school with professionals who specialize in that middle child age, that junior high child age, will help to yield better academic outcomes by having them be able to focus more on classroom and therefore then receive the instruction that the teacher is providing on a day-to-day basis.
And then my last comment and question, I know that we had junior high schools back in the day. In terms of the data pieces for that, do we have, how were our students doing when they did have those schools in place in terms of reading and with math?
So
I know that's a history lesson to go back for.
Big history lesson. When we had junior highs, I was a substitute teacher. So that was how many years ago? So I do not have that data in front of me. We believe that was a part of the facility's master plan and that reconfiguration. So I wasn't at the table when those conversations were being held. I don't know how many people are here who could share about that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure you can.
I can share briefly on that topic. And Dr. Moffett will recall that at least several times during ad hoc, I said I'm not interested in junior highs, I'm interested in middle schools. And so this is an adjustment for me to be supportive of junior highs, but I am because we have an immediacy issue. Not just the overcrowding, but also our high schools are not scoring well for the most part. Whether it's the state testing or that report card that I don't like very much anyway, but I think there's a need to have intense academic and enhancement opportunities and support opportunities for our 7th and 8th graders that really at the high school level they can't get in part, or at the elementary that they can get, because the concentration is at the 2 bookends, and in the middle, that middle child, that middle learner gets lost. And that middle child if you even look at some place, let's say like a Walnut Hills, there are students at Walnut Hills, there are students at our military academies in the United States that have preliminary grade bands, even at West Point, where you have somebody not quite ready. They have a period of time for better preparation for that kind of intense academic work. So I've come to agree. I love the middle school concept for middle school reasoning. And I will also say that the junior high right now, in order to not only address the overcrowding in our high schools, but we must concentrate on our 7th and 8th graders, where indeed that's where a lot of the dropout period starts to happen. And that's where it's difficult to be successful the rest of the years. The reason we went away from junior highs is that they had become kind of disorderly without focus. And I think some of us can remember that. And when we did the facilities master plan, the state insisted, and we agreed, that the K-8 model would make the most sense. Well, that lasted 2 years before the elementary people said, please, please take the 7th and 8th graders and put them at high school. It is a matter of public record that happened because they were spending so much time concentrating on discipline and issues like that in the elementary K-8s that it was not very successful for them to focus on literacy, focus on all the things that were being tested at the elementary grades. And so we have a great mix, K-12 and K-8 and PK this and what have you. And I think this is another opportunity to be flexible to better serve the academic needs of our kids. But that was part of the history of it. Dr. Moffitt.
So I first want to share with the public, there are 74 slides that are on board docs. So you all can see these. I know we went through like 25 of them really fast, but it looks like they're on board docs. I just verified, so you all can go and see. So if we're going too fast, you can get it from there. So I have a couple of questions. Can you go to slide 15, Rob? One of the concerns that I have, that's a pretty big one, and I've been able to get out and speak to a lot of the staff that have shared their time with me. A Montessori coach who has shared their time with me. I spent some time at Woodford, spent some time with community and Clark, so that I could understand how the changes that we're proposing are going to impact the students, because that's really my first priority. What concerns me on this particular slide is that I don't see Hayes Porter listed. So I'm not exactly sure if that was an afterthought. I can understand why they feel like it is, because their LSDMC wasn't engaged at all. So I see Rothenberg, but I don't hear any Rothenberg families. That doesn't mean anything, just means I don't hear them. And, but I hear Hayes Porter, and that's a concern. So for me, Hayes Porter, and I'm just gonna share what I look at. I share this with the Woodford staff. We spent 2 years with no data given to us. And so all we had to look at was building utilization and the community that engaged with us. And so now we have an opportunity, to a credit for Superintendent Murphy, to actually get some data around grade bands and what's the preference. And it took us a while to get there. So I'm just letting you all know, when you look at the ad hoc meetings, there wasn't a lot of substance. We talked ideas, but we didn't have a lot of this data around grades, et cetera. So no school really understood if they were impacted except for their numbers. We also didn't engage the community at all. And so for that, as the chair of ad hoc, I apologize, because that was the ask multiple times, but it didn't happen. And so we have things that impact us right now that make this feel urgent. It's not fair, but Senate Bill 295 is being heard tomorrow. And it directly impacts this district on the underutilization or the under-enrollment of their buildings. And it is being held tomorrow at 3:30. And so I posted it. I've been trying to tell all the agencies that, hey, pay attention, because they could come back and tell us, no matter what you want to do, you're going to close your buildings. That could happen. So we have to pay attention to that. It's not a budget issue for me. It was really just best practices. And what we heard from the staff and the parents that engaged with us at ad hoc is, middle schools, middle schools, middle schools. The seventh and eighth graders are driving us crazy. We heard that for 18 months. They were driving us crazy. We looked at the discipline. We looked at their academics, and their academics was impacted. Their discipline was impacted. So I thought as the chair, and board member, President Bolton was on there along with former board member Jones, we thought, well, we don't want to close any buildings. Let's look at our underutilized buildings. That's how we got to this, because someone asked the question, how did we get to this? And so it was about the corridor model, which you saw, and it was also about not closing any of our buildings, but how can we use our buildings more efficiently? And it was about middle schools. Now, for me, I have a problem taking a building that has 4 stars and closing it. I just do. That just really concerns me. And so, and their lack of engagement, that's not something that I'm willing to really support. But what I would like to know is how many community councils have we spoken with? Because I think what needs to happen is we need to really band together as a community and get our enrollment back up. We need to, because you all know what the challenge is. Our buildings are under enrolled, and we have to do this. Some things just have to happen, and it has nothing to do with loving the district, but I would much rather us do some things than for the state to come in and tell us to do some things. But I don't think that we've engaged. So of the 77, you made a mention that there were 77 engagement sessions. How many of those on slide 13 involved community councils?
There's a slide that has a few of them listed on 16 at the bottom.
So of the community councils, 1 to 16. So with intentionality, how have we engaged those community councils in these neighborhoods that are impacted? I mean, that's a serious concern for me.
So Dr.
because-
Moffitt, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Apologize. We focused on our local school decision-making committees where, generally speaking, most schools have a member from the community council as a representative. I can't say that that's gospel, but generally speaking, that's where we get our community voice on our LSDMCs.
I got you. So you know I'm a former LSDMC chair, so for me, that's great, but have we engaged those families at all? Have we sent a survey out at all to those families? Have we asked the LSDMC to send a survey out to them to even let them know? It just concerns me that some of these people are hearing this for the first time or within 3 weeks. It just concerns me. So I'm wondering, how much have we surveyed people that are impacted by these results?
We have not done a survey.
Okay. Another one of my questions is, were preschoolers, I just want to clarify, preschoolers do not count for our funding, but they do count towards our enrollment, right?
That's correct.
So have any...
Unless it's a preschool
with disabilities. With disabilities. So one of the things that I heard is that Woodford was able to fill with siblings a preschool class, which would increase their numbers. If it's 20 students, are we denying some of the preschools at our schools? Let me just ask the question this way.
Sure.
In an effort to fill Bramble, are we denying preschools to any of the schools like John P. Parker and Woodford?
Not at all. And I believe you're aware that the preschool enrollment is done differently through the preschool team, not the customer care center, and not at the school level.
Right.
So I'm not aware of any denials.
Okay.
At preschool.
And are we able to consider something different from Bramble, which is not listed on these slides, but concerns me because it is the epitome of underutilization? So are we able to do or consider something different for Bramble, for like maybe the middle school there, or something other than the 33 students that are there? At all?
What else?
I didn't get an answer to my question yet.
We can consider anything. So the Bramble building that was purchased just last year, I'm not completely sure what the total plan was for that at that time, but that was a newly reacquired, so to speak, property for our district.
Okay, so I would love to see some thoughts around that. And then if you could go to slide 72, Rob, because that's under the addendums, and the public may or may not see that, but I put this on my Facebook page, but it's here. And it also talks about some of the schools in blue are the underutilized buildings, correct? Or the under-enrolled buildings, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, just so that the public can see that. And it has our stars. Thank you for doing this, because we had asked for this during the ad hoc as well. It's slide 72. But we wanted to know what the cost per building is and the cost per student for each building, and then what their academic stars are by the state. So thank you for putting this together, because you've given this to us in a presentation before, but this is just representative of where some of our schools are going. And so for me, I kind of go back to this chart when I look at our impact to buildings, what their overall stars are. This is not a criticism to our staff, because we've got some awesome staff in every one of these buildings doing their best and some awesome work. So I just want the community to know we've presented on this before, and that this is also in this packet as well. And
But the superintendent hasn't presented today on that, but it is on board docs for people to
it
look
hasn't
at.
been presented today, but she
Today.
did do a presentation a few board meetings ago with this particular
Everything
slide.
here, yeah.
Yes. And then for the Dawn students, can you share any information about the status of the sponsorship for CPS, being able to sponsor charters?
We put in a request to find out what our status is. I have not heard back yet.
Okay. Do we need to make a motion for that? Do you
No.
know? Okay. I just was
You
wondering.
can make an assignment if you want, but not a motion.
Okay, great. That's
for
it for
that.
now. Thank you.
Other comments, questions, concerns? Mr. Craig?
So I will try to get through mine quickly, because I know we are trying to end on time today. I want to just start by saying, I think there's, some of this for me is about lack of, or why are we doing it so quickly? And why is everything must change by the next school year? I think part of this for me also gets into the question I raised with regards to the lottery, because I think this is another aspect of how we do education that will deter people from staying in our district. I've said this at our business meeting, I said this at our last business meeting, I said it at our budget and finance meeting. I have severe concerns that we are deterring parents from staying within our district by making so many changes. And I say that because I heard, again, anecdotally, we all hear things from folks, but at some of the schools that are not being touched by this, you have parents who are saying, I don't know whether or not I want to continue, because I don't know where my kid will be going in 2 years. I don't know where they will be in a year or so. And so I have some worries about things like that are part of, and they're not part of discussions with me. These are part of discussions they have on Facebook and in the many Facebook parent groups that exist in our district, which is a lovely thing and also a terrifying thing at times when you look at some of the comments folks make within those groups. But the concern I have is, again, we talked about stability as the justification for things that we did at the last board business meeting, yet this isn't stability for some of those students. For the conversation around, I want to specifically talk about the conversation around Taft Elementary, which again, I had the pleasure of meeting 8 wonderful young men who will someday grow on to rule the world somewhere or another, who reinstilled in me the great hard work that's going on. And I think some of the concerns I have is just some of the movements that some of these kids have already experienced in their first 3, 4, 5 years of schooling have been rough. Right, there's a kid who was in the group with me who had been to, this is his 3rd school, and he's finally found a place he felt like he belonged. And he had become a leader among a lot of the young groups and one of the young men's groups that we have in the district. But the challenges that we see in that is the same challenge that I raised with regard to Woodford. Because again, we moved some of the students out of Riverview, said we have a program, we have schools that want you and take you, and then we move folks, and I get it's not necessarily about whether or not the school has, how great are the teachers and all these other factors that are part of it at times. It is also sometimes about just, do we have capacity within a school? Because I've been here at the district when we had to close the building that we had parents left and right coming in begging us to keep, and every year we had fewer and fewer and fewer students who attended the school, to the point where we actually had a charter school in the building with a public school. That didn't make sense, right? So like but that took time. And so for me, there's an aspect of this that says that we feel like this is a rush to make some decisions in an effort to do things that doesn't need to be done at this very second. I want to specifically, though, like point to the idea of, and again, we keep talking about Montessori going into the conversation. I know you mentioned that and it was presented today about with regards to making Montessori program at Taft. Again, I'm kind of wondering, and maybe you can explain a little bit to me on this with regard to the wrap. Is there a necessity to not have students in the building to facilitate having the wrap?
No. So originally, the plan was that the preschool students at Rising Star Vine would go to Taft Elementary to help grow Taft Elementary. That was the rationale for moving them. However, there have been some preschool families who have said, we don't want to move from Rising Star Vine. And as a result also of the conversation around creating a second Montessori neighborhood at Rothenberg to try to grow that, they said they didn't want that. So Taft Elementary said, hey, we would like to be considered for that. That's where that came from.
Okay. So I mean, like we, in theory, could have the Rising Stars of Vine within the building as well as certain wrap services offered in the same facility, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Because I think again, some of this to me feels like we're making changes for the sake of making changes as opposed to utilizing space. Again, I think we look at Bramble and like Rising Stars Vine is a great example of this, where there may be a great, they actually have one of the larger preschool programs in the district where it's just a standalone kind of facilities. And I think it's a great thing. And I think I've been there to the services that are already offered for our Project Connect students. My mom volunteers with them. And I think it's a great thing that we have some of those resources there, but it's on a bus route, which to me offers an advantage to having it be there in addition to even maybe having the preschool program still remain to a certain extent. Yeah. Because it offers space for folks to be able to catch the bus there, get your services, and keep moving through the district. So, I mean, I would certainly not be opposed to offering that flexibility within that space. Again, I think that really is dependent upon the capacity within the building. So, and that's something that I won't pretend to say I know about, because I think that's something that you all have far more information on. But I think if Taft is willing to be a Montessori program, or still even there's some flexibility within that idea of Montessori STEM world, because I think that is really cool that we have kids learning science, technology early on. That's tremendous, and I'm also a math person, and so for me, the growth of math within our district is something that we've been doing better at, actually, since COVID, much better than many of the other public school districts in the country. And so that's something we should be championing more and bringing to the table more. The other part, and this is one where I again, the sixth grade move to South Avondale is one that is also a hard one for me, because we've been doing so much work around the collective 4, 5, 6, whether it's athletics, whether it's arts, whether it's whatever, programming. It's really been built around that 4, 5, 6. And that we have an inconsistency in whether it's K-5 or K-6 in some of these spaces. But I also think that creates a space where, again, my issue with when we did phase 1 was the movement of 1 year. If a student were to go from Douglas to South Avondale for 1 year to then go to another school, that's 3 years in a row, they'll be in a different school. And I have a little bit of a concern with that inconsistency in how we operate as a district. And I'm just curious, is the purpose of have it 6, 7, 8 as opposed to a 7, 8 because of the lack of capacity to have the 6th grade within those different schools, or to build up capacity within South Avondale to be numbers? It's just a curious point for me, because I think it presents a little question as to like what happens if a student does not go there for 7th and 8th. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it becomes challenging to think about when you take it in isolation and just think about 6, 7, 8 at South Avondale. When you look at the whole picture globally and where our students are coming from and being able to think about the number of those students and how our building utilization will work, putting at additional grade level in a particular building may or may not work, and in this case would not work to be like a pre-K to 6 in Douglas is probably what is being proposed. So therefore, 6th grade and the middle school concept, because what originally came out as the direction was middle school, not junior highs. And so that's why you have some of those grade 5, 6, 7, 8 configurations.
I mean, I guess I would I would raise the one concern about South Avondale is not necessarily close to some of the other schools where we were talking about making it PK to 5 now. And I really would want us to rethink about moving students from a PK to 5 school to a 6th grade program somewhere else, that thereby they might move to a 7th grade program somewhere else. And again, I get that it sounds like it's in isolation, but I think the problem I have with it is that, again, the most active places where our parents are engaged, where we have some of the best responses and we've had some of the greatest growth, is in the places that are actually the most stable in how our students stay there and progress. And I am just, I continue to be worried because I have heard some of the challenges and I continue to hear some of the challenges that creating the 7th and 8th grade model may do, but I think specifically adding the 6th grade for certain programming and certain activities and operations, and I think you're going to talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation, so I don't want to steal any moments from that, but I think that's something we need to really be thinking about, is the more consistent we are as a district as to whether it's PK through 6 or PK through 5, the more consistent we're going to give options to families and the more likely they are to stay. The last one is I will, again, revisit. I just don't understand, and I think Dr. Moffitt mentioned it already, but I just don't understand if we're looking at underutilization to maintain Bramble as a pre-K program when there is absolutely not enough students that will ever be planned to be put in that space to fill the building. Makes no sense to me if we're talking about underutilization in other buildings. And so I know the products of Woodford. I'm a product of Woodford. I know what Woodford can do. My nephew is a product of Woodford. My niece is a product of Woodford. I have a special connection to him, but quite honestly, the concern I have more of is just that we are moving something into a space where no one's asked us to do so. And I get that we may have done that as a board, and we may have made that decision, and we may have given you that direction, but I think we were wrong to do so if we did. The last thing I'll say, and again, I'll hand the mic over to whoever else next is up there, is that I do think I'm a big fan, and I appreciate you doing a lot of the engagement you've done. I think it's still unfair to ask you to go do engagement on something we haven't given you a definitive direction on. And I think it's unfair for us to ask you to go out and tell people to get surveyed, to get anything else, and all this information about folks who when it's been communicated to you to do X, Y, and Z. And I think what we're going to end up doing is seeing folks who nobody wants to change their school. Absolutely nobody, unless it's beneficial to them, nobody wants to make changes. That's just the reality, and it's the hard decisions that we as a board have to give you direction on. But for me, this really impacts because of things like the magnet lottery and these other programming, which are things that we have to do now to make sure that we get the administration on the right foot so that we can do the actual things that we're supposed to do, like get our staffing sheets together and these other things and looking at projections. And if we can't do that in a timely manner, if we can't give you the direction to really have the engaged conversations that probably should happen, I think we are failing you in that time. And so I appreciate the desire for the board to have more engagement. I think the reality is that if we're going to do this, and just vote on it, let's just do it. If we're not going to do it, then let's move to have longer discussions and all the other stuff, but to give you clear direction. The sooner we do that, the more we can actually operate and allow parents to sign their kids up for schools, as opposed to where we are now.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Other comments from anybody? Mr. Crossett.
I wanted to echo that with Hayes being a school with 4 stars, I would not be inclined to want to change that. Also, I'm wondering if, in terms of timing, if there's a possibility of looking at some of these proposals would make sense sooner than later. Maybe some of them could be looked at over a longer period of time and get more community engagement, to echo what Board Member Craig was saying. I think one thing you might want to check with your some of your principals at schools, because I've found in touring schools that some of the principals intentionally attend community council meetings. So we may have had more engagement there than what we know about, or what's been reported. So that's, I think those are just my main comments, is maybe I guess my last comment is, I guess I said it earlier, but I want to reiterate that maybe some of these things that we can make, changes we can make sooner than later, to consider that. Maybe this could come in parcels as to how we get it delivered. I also want to reiterate what Board Member Moffett said about the law that's going to be heard tomorrow. I think it would behoove us to be in a position where we're anticipating the change rather than the state telling us what to do, because then we're reacting. Here we have an opportunity to be proactive. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to inquire before I begin with my thoughts. Have you had an opportunity, Superintendent Murphy, to look at the facilities master plan?
Yes.
Okay. And so the reason why I asked that question, and I have this here with me, because I took a deep dive in it myself to really look at what the processes were in terms of making significant adjustments within the district. And so it outlines a thorough process to engage the community. It outlines a thorough process to make sure that all stakeholders are involved. It provides the historical context in terms of why decisions are being made. It also outlines what the overall impact would be, as well as what the cash flow would look like. And so I asked that question because I think it is very important and critical for this process to have something very similar, as well as a task force that's being implemented so that there can be objectivity in the process. The other thing that I have to bring mention to, because I also did some research myself, and I have all of the ad hoc committee reports, which I've done research on. And it's very challenging to hear some of my colleagues talk about the work that was done and why certain aspects of the work was not able to be done. If you look through the reports, it's discussing, and there's a focus from, yes, Board Member Jones, to discuss the boundary lines and keep it very specific. Yes, there was conversation about middle schools. However, there was an overarching target and really trying to allow the administration to do the work. And the previous administration continued to ask questions about what is the expectation. And so there's a lot of misinformation that's being communicated. There's a lot of posturing that's being communicated that's difficult to digest. And so I just want to make sure that we're aware and the community is aware, because on one hand, we hear there's been an extensive process of engagement of 18 months, and on the other hand, there has not been. And if you look through the reports, there has not been. There's been specific community members that showed up to the ad hoc committee meetings. However, it has not been a robust effort of community engagement. So I just wanted to highlight that. As it pertains to, I think, slide 28 for the presentation. It's the Aiken, Pleasant Hill, that slide. But on this particular slide, I'm curious to know about the equity and how this recommendation aligns with our equity policy. Because we're saying We are communicating that we're going to have our Wooden Hills Academy students, pre-K through 5, solely go to the school in Wooden Hills. And there's also been conversation, which you've highlighted on the slide, that there's redevelopment in this area. And there is, pertaining to Wynn Terrace as well as Finlater Garden. From my understanding, some of these families will be displaced as renovations are occurring. So if we're talking about displacing our students that are currently there, in addition to them experiencing displacement with housing, how are we ensuring equity? How are we ensuring their mental health? How are we ensuring their academic success? And again, this is highlighting that it is not ensuring equity, it's actually disparaging our attempts to provide equity for our students, because going outside of their environment provides exposure and an opportunity to experience different things and different learning experiences. So I want you to kind of speak about that, how this decision is being made here.
In conversations with the principal and the school community, to be able to keep those children together, walk across the street to get to their school, was what their desire was. And we've
Okay.
heard this over years versus getting on a bus, riding up the hill to another school when they can see their neighborhood school. That is what was shared with us.
Okay, so that is from the principal. Have you had an opportunity as well to speak with the community at large in terms of what their desires are?
We spoke with their local school decision-making committee.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's all that I have.
Thank you. You have, right now, if we could, I'm going to ask a few questions if I could, and then we can go back because we, continue to, where we are is where we are. I think part of the quick time issue, it's hard for me to know that it's quick time because this does go back 7 years as board action. 7 years. This is not something that has happened in 18 years or 4 months. This is the stuff that's been talked about for 7 years, publicly. And never have we had an administration that has been willing to face the future that our finance chair, Mr. Craig, keeps mentioning to us, and our treasurer keeps mentioning, that we must change the way that we do business, or we will not sustain ourselves. Now, this is all hard for everybody. And history teaches us that the FMP was harder than this ever could be. And after it was completed, we came back with a robust effort. But we have not been able to do all that we wanted to do over time, because this is exactly what happens. The minute somebody proposes something, somebody doesn't like it, rightfully so. People love their schools. We're proud of that. We want them to be proud of their schools. We want our students of our schools to come, as we've now been joined by many students. But part of the quick time is that we have to get the staffing ready for next year, which is what Mr. Craig has mentioned. Part of it is that we have 3 renewals and possible 2 bond levies or more in the next 7 years or 6 years. So there is a time crush here, because we don't even know now what to ask for yet. And we have one in November regarding the $48 million one. Then there's a $65 million one, and there's a $52 million one, and there's bond levies needed in between. So there is a reason this is happening at some sort of speed that I know makes us all uncomfortable, especially the 7 people sitting up here, let alone the people, the professionals that have to carry this out. Having said that, I do have a couple of things I'd like to address. Just for clarification, the clarification on Taft that Vine Street preschool Rising Stars stays at Vine Street.
That is what the current request is.
Yeah, and the wrap goes to Taft.
So Taft Elementary School LSDMC asked for the wrap to come to them. The Rising Star parents asked that their preschool classrooms remain at the Rising Star location.
Okay. I have another couple of issues I'd like to raise. I'm not sure that the board fully appreciates, because I know I don't. I've been around, as was earlier mentioned, for many, many years. I'm not sure we fully appreciate all the facilities that CPS now has possession of and owns and is using in downtown Cincinnati, especially if you want to say the West End, or you want to say along the corridor of Ezra Charles. There are a number of buildings that we have besides Hayes Porter and besides Taft High School. And when we get to assignment, I would like to make an assignment that the administration brief the board on the properties that we have. And everybody in this room knows those properties are of particular interest to many people. Absolutely, and who's defended that? Well, you have, we have. And it's been very difficult the times that we've been unable to. You know, the reality is we are in possession of wonderful properties, and we have to protect them as best we can against forces that are stronger than us. But, I know you are, I'm just talking about us, because we demonstrate quite often our weakness. But here's the thing I'd like to ask if I could. OSBA does say, and I know the superintendent keeps resisting this, but OSBA does say that what they're considering for the next biennial budget is language that not only talks about facilities usage and utilization, but also school performance. And the people in Columbus don't like us. And they like our children and our staff and our unions even less than they like us. So keep that in mind. My concern in all of this is how we can not only vote up or down any of this, but how we are prepared. And I'd like to make a suggestion to the administration, since the West Side continues to be a challenge. I've said this before, and I think I said it in ad hoc. I would really like us to consider both the Chase and North Side and Mount Airy Elementary to be West Side. And I think it's important to, in the West Side corridor, adding and leaving the central corridor and putting the Parker Woods Montessori into the central corridor to help balance, because I know what many of the staff did was work it out so that there's about the same number of kids to draw from in each of those three corridors. But until we start thinking of Parker Woods as not being West Side just because it has been assigned to Gamble, it is part of the rebuilding or the build-up of Montessori in the central corridor. And Parker Woods is central corridor, and if Taft is going to get the one to try to build another Montessori, that's kind of central. So just to consider that would help, and maybe it would help some of the seat situations in the West Side. The other, on the specific, I think Western Hills, Ethel Taylor, Roll Hill, Leap, I think that begins to make sense to me. The Hayes Porter, we try not to dislodge, since we've made a commitment to neighborhood versus, and actually been reducing magnets, keeping a neighborhood school, but I would like to see the proof, and I think there is some for Hayes, that it truly is a neighborhood school, that it's a neighborhood school. That's something that unfortunately Woodford cannot prove to us, or at least prove to me, that it's a neighborhood school. And I think we need to see the demographics and the pull for that if we could. We talked about Vine Street, and we did not mention today the Frederick Douglass and Evanston, and that would be Evanston moving to Frederick Douglass, as you said, and then Evanston would become, for all intents and purposes, the Withrow Junior High.
Yes, seventh
Is
and
that
eighth
the way
grade.
to
Yes.
understand it? Again,
Yes.
some of the naming of these, and I know you resist changing names because you say, oh no, I'll get in trouble from the board if I start changing names, but I think it would help people understand a little bit better. And then I would suggest emphasizing the Sailor Park and Euler kind of unification or partnering a little bit more. You hint at it a bit as athletics, but for me, it might not be a bad idea for both of those PK 12s to even have much more of a symbiotic relationship, if you would, there. And then I'm more than happy publicly or offline or whatever to talk about why the Aiken, Pleasant Hill, Winton Hills, and College Hill is really an equity issue. And very frankly, this whole plan is an issue of equity because you are allowing programs to exist and be accessible in 3 different places in this district. What is happening in the east is happening in the west, and it's happening in the central corridor, instead of people having to travel across the district to get somewhere. And then finally for me, and I'm sorry to belabor this, but I think there's a value to middle schools, but for the Clark family, you just unfortunately became too successful and too popular. And you're on too small of a campus for your popularity. And that dates back before anybody else was on this board besides me, and that's when the Hyde Park community said, we don't want anything bigger than what we don't want as big as you're proposing. We don't want the 4th floor, or the 3rd floor, or what have you. So there was a limit from the very beginning placed, and a community made an additional limit, and we agreed to it to keep the Hyde Park community happy, and I spoke out about that at the time. But the reality is, we can't afford to give up the 7th and 8th grade for Clark because you're so successful. But you cannot have a big enough campus in one place. That's the problem that we're trying to overcome. And yes, we are totally committed to the 3rd high school, Montessori High School. That was proposed 7 years ago by Melanie Bates, but we never had an administration with the courage to push it. And I just feel real strongly that as we look at all this, we are going to all come together, and we are going to have things that are going to be successful and what have you. But right now, the importance is to really, as somebody mentioned, work out this as best we can together. Member Moffitt.
So I just have a question. Are we talking about for Clark, I know there was conversation around the Woodford space being Clark 2, but is there consideration of the Woodford space remaining Woodford, like so that the specialized groups stay together, and then Clark gets the 7th graders that could not go into main Clark 1. I hate to say that, I'm not trying to be funny. Clark 1, the ones that couldn't, the overflow, and then we just start 7th graders, and then next year we start 8th graders, just like Clark started. And then you build a grade, so that it would become the 3rd Montessori, instead of it being Clark number 2.
It wouldn't be the 3rd Montessori because it wouldn't be enough if you want to build out a 3rd Montessori high school is the goal. We have talked about perhaps Woodford's K-5 could remain there while we begin with a Clark 7th grade.
Okay.
I have some concerns about that because of some staffing issues, and they have raised the accreditation issue in terms of not having those 7th and 8th graders together. It depends on the pleasure of the board and the desire of the board to live with that for a year.
So when I asked that question because I talked to a few Montessori coaches who shared there were mixed feelings around the dual split, but they said that the seventh and eighth graders, that model is built on being together, but the seventh graders you could have like 50 seventh graders, and then next year they would be eighth graders, and they would be the leaders of the seventh graders, so you could build that way.
If we wanted to live with that for a year, it is doable.
And then maybe, okay, so that was my first question. My other question is around Evanston. When we were talking at ad hoc, when we talked about Evanston, we talked about Frederick Douglass, and this is a clarifying question, not a suggestion. It was said Evanston could not move to Frederick Douglass because Evanston had a higher rating? Is that how that was? Because it had been a blue ribbon school?
That you can't go to a lower rated school.
So we could not,
And it depends on, this is all in the collective bargaining agreement. So then it depends on how you do this, whether it is a merger or a consolidation, or we would have to work through what it would need to look like.
Okay.
Depends on what language you use and depending on how you would want to make this move.
Okay, and can you share what are some of the deadlines for, I know we've got our 6 union contracts that we got an extension from last year, so
yes.
that's being bargained for this year, is that right?
We didn't do any bargaining with any of the union groups last year. They're all due, 7. The Cincinnati Federation of Teachers and CFOP have already noticed us. Okay. We have to respond. I believe Dan will have to help me December, like now, for collective bargaining. Yes, we have to respond. For projections, that is typically done in December. That then drives the staffing. That then drives being able to make changes in January, February, should a teacher want to try to go to another school.
So you would need decisions to be made around some things in January for staffing and to remain in compliance with the contracts. Am I understanding that right? I just kind of really want the public to understand what we're up
December would be
against.
so much better.
Say again?
December.
Okay. And then I just want to remind people that we are having the parent table talk tomorrow at 7 o'clock. I believe it's going to be streamed, so you have another opportunity to engage. And then again, Senate Bill 295, it's on one of these slides, it is being heard tomorrow, and that impacts the closure of our buildings that sit empty for 1 year and are at current 60% utilized. So that's not any posturing, that's just Ohio Revised Code 3314 that currently exists, and the 295 is to revise that code. So that is being heard and could impact us. Can you share what would happen? Do you know? I think Eve might be the longest person here that could see that from the facilities master plan. How does that work if the state changes legislation? In 2013, that happened. So how does that work when the state says, hey, your buildings have sat empty or they've been underutilized and they need to be closed? Do they give us time to do that, to figure it out, or is it a year?
I think we had that discussion a couple of weeks ago, and for some reason, I think we settled in on it. They had 2 years, or it was, or I don't think it was immediate, but I think it was 2 years. But keep in mind, they not only said that we had to sell, but they told us that we had to sell it to charter people, our competition.
Right.
So keep that in mind. And the thing that worries me about the legislation most of all is them putting it, as OSBA has warned, in the language for the biennial state budget. Because they can make that immediate, that would somehow determine or influence or inform the amounts of money that we would be getting in the state biennial budget. So those are concerns of all of us.
I just wanted to get that clarification around Clark and what your suggestion is. Is it the third middle school maybe? Or
So just to complete that, where we left things in response to wanting units to stay together, we would move all of the units as a whole. Preschool, we would move all of preschool as a whole and keep the remaining students there for another year, starting at least the 7th grade. If it's not the pleasure to do 7th and 8th grade, at least starting the 7th grade. Montessori, I'm sorry.
So what I'm thinking of is not moving Clark currently, but just having a smaller seventh grade with the ones that currently don't have a spot. That's what I was thinking. Is that not
So you
feasible?
would have, are you saying, Dr. Moffitt,
No.
there would be 135, I think, the 135 seventh graders at the current Clark building on Erie Avenue, and then the remaining students would be on the Woodford site? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm asking, so that we wouldn't have to impact Clark 1. Again,
We would live with that financially for that year.
okay.
Well, I would have concerns from a standpoint of just, if you have only those kids. I mean, that seems to me that you would have that problem, not having enough kids in the building to do the work that you need for Montessori.
Well, I asked the
Thank you for coming.
Yes, we were going to say thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. What school?
Hayes.
Hayes.
It's Hayes.
Thank you, Hayes Porter.
Hayes Porter. Advocacy, advocacy.
So I just asked the question of the coaches, and that was one of the things that they suggested was that you could have a building with a small number. You could do like a 50 class of seventh graders and add to it, and it would be the feeder for Pleasant Ridge Montessori. And it would be a feeder for as a third Montessori. So I was just wondering if that was what you were suggesting, or is it even, can we get some data around that?
So that is something that was brought to the table, correct? But the third Montessori, my understanding is it was to begin to build a third Montessori high school. That would not work. And a high school in the Woodford building would probably be similar to how we had Spencer in the old Douglas building on Alms Place. We would begin to run into the same high school need concerns.
But my reaction to that is that to build the third Montessori high school, which we have projected that might be at the Hughes Annex building, and they've figured some of that out, they're having Taft Elementary start building in that central corridor a new Montessori, additional Montessori pod. But to me, the 7th and 8th grade from Clark and the 9-12, that's all one school. It's two different buildings, it's two different campuses, but it's all one school.
Well, I was just thinking in how we started Clark was one grade at a time. So why wouldn't we and it took years to get to where you had capacity issues. So if you start with the 7th grade and you build a 7th grade, even though it would be, the desire is to have a whole high school, you're gonna take years to get there because you're building one grade at a time. And by the time that they would get there to capacity, Woodford could be able to, we could make some decisions around Woodford, but it would give them the opportunity to take some time. My other question, and that's fine, I just wanted to explore it. Have we thought about adding a 7th and 8th grade to Hayes Porter? Is that even feasible to put the middle school down there?
What they have.
So
Well,
the
if
7th and 8th grade, we left Taft 7 through 12. We left
Okay.
that there.
Okay.
You would still, which would then cause a different concern.
Okay, I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Vice President,
Yes,
then we'll go
yes,
to
yes.
Mr. Crossett.
So many moving parts, Superintendent. Thank you so much. I just wanted to kind of go back to the slides. I know you left off on what was the slide number? Do you remember what slide? Carson.
Sorry, if given opportunity, I was going to go to 39. There's just a
Okay.
few left that I think are very
Perfect.
not
I
as
just wanted to say
complicated.
a little bit, I know as you're going to be moving on to slide 38, it's titled The Focus Proposals and Other Changes. I do want everyone here in attendance to know that as board members, and I'm going to speak on myself, we received your emails, we received calls, I've received people stopping me in the grocery store, and I appreciate you stopping me to share your concerns and sharing what you would like to see happen. And I do think as we're moving forward, I'm just going to say, there are things that I'm going to tell you right here and now that I will not be voting for. There are things that I think are a great idea, and I think that there are things that are going to be good for our district. But what I do want you to understand understand is that your voice, it is important, and I know some of you have felt that your voice has not been heard, or you have felt that we have not listened to you, but I'm saying to you that we are hearing you, and I know for sure that there are some things that I don't agree with, Superintendent, that you've listed, and I have questions and asked for some, additional guidance or additional information. I do want you all to know to continue to still stay aware to all of the next and upcoming meetings. Please come out. Please come out and utilize your voice. I think Dr. Moffitt mentioned, what was it, a parent meeting coming up? What is that, tomorrow? That's another opportunity to share that voice, to share your concerns. And if you cannot be there, please feel free to email one of us. We will definitely share your concerns as well. So thank you. We will repeat that information tomorrow. What time? What's the time? 7. And I should have it in front of me here. And it will be streamed as well. And if you need some more information, there's our parent champion right there. Raise your hand. Thanks.
Other questions, comments before, yes, Mr. Clausen, I'm sorry.
I'll be brief. I did want to thank Superintendent Murphy for taking this on. This is a giant task, and it's many years overdue. But I also, some new information for me was that Taft Elementary was willing to take on a Montessori program, and I think that's very interesting. It seems like they have a strong partnership there that is very valuable. So maybe there's maybe you could think about having a longer-term, clear plan for that third Montessori high school, and maybe it's in the Central Corridor as well. But that might be something helpful. Thank you.
Member Mapp.
Yes, I just have one final question for clarity. So is the recommendation, Superintendent Murphy, for the plan to still occur within 1 year, or is it a multi-phasic plan?
I'm working at your pleasure. The proposal is 25, 26. But I've heard some things about slow some things down, reconsider this. I'm working at your pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
I would only add to that that when we came out of ad hoc, it was, and it's been conceived as a 3-year plan. But this year that we're in had to be the first year, or we would fall too desperately behind on everything. So I think the phasing piece is an important one. Good. Thanks for asking that. Vice President?
Yes.
And then we'll have the superintendent finish this.
Clarification piece on what Board Member Mapp asked in terms of the time frame. So let's say these proposals are given to us, we can determine that time frame as well. So just to add to that, I think you asked a question in regards to, is it a set in stone? I don't think it's set in stone. It's according to what we want.
Yeah, I was just trying to determine what the proposed recommendation was from the superintendent.
Right, and I think the proposed recommendation is obviously very quickly, and we've heard concerns of too fast or not enough time, or we don't agree with this, so it will be the will of the board in terms of determining that.
Member Mapp.
I was just going to say, just in closing, that I will not be supporting any aspect of the recommendation, so. But just wanted to make sure that there was clarity to everyone listening about what the recommendation was.
So on December 9th, you won't vote for any part of this plan?
That's correct, I will not be.
Any part?
No part of the plan.
Increasing career tech or welcome centers for our multi-language families, nothing?
No part of the plan. While I
Okay.
think that there may be great recommendations, I do have great concern with the process and fidelity of the plan being implemented, so I will not be taking part in the vote.
Well, as chair, I actually thank you for making that clear now. I really appreciate that. I really do. Oh, you want to conclude this, or continue with the slides and conclude? Then, well, I'm sure we'll think of more things to ask you.
Rob, can we go to slide 39? This slide simply lays out the early learning centers across the district in each of the corridors. Depending on the direction of the board, we would add Rising Star Vine back in, just depending on how this plan lays out. And on the next slide, we talk about the welcome centers. We decided to lay this out on a map format as well, based on the corridor, so that you can see that we're proposing them evenly spread across the district to be able to address our ever-growing multi-language learner population. On the next slide, you see how our junior high and middle schools are laid out evenly across the district, the same concept. We've talked about the programs. We can move past the next two slides. On page 44, there's more detail about the RAP. The board, the public have seen this information. I think it's very clear. Our goal is to try to increase services to our students experiencing homelessness. And so then if we go to slide page 48, you've also been told about the Gilligan Digital Academy. The way this was originally designed, our audience is completely different at this point. As we went through the pandemic, the audience has changed at this point, and so we have done an audit of our GDA, and you will see coming through very shortly a proposal about what to do about that for next school year in terms of a potential redesign. You've seen the information about programming for junior highs and middle schools. On the next slide, just some support being requested to change to centralized enrollment. Right now, we have 65, 66 different ways that enrollment is being done. We'd like to bring that in centrally and have that done by our customer care team. We also are looking at our specialized units and making sense of the corridor model in terms of where by grade levels we lay out our specialized units. And that is where I'll stop for today as the next piece goes into phase 3.
Thank you. Mr. Craig?
So I wanted to give you time to get to this part because I felt like it should be better to ask you questions after you presented on it than before. But I want to kind of revisit two things. One is the specialized units. And this raises some concern to me, and I think it's part of what was raised by one of our speakers today with regard to there are some needs that are better served collectively than individually when it comes to some of our specialized units. And so what I do worry about is that we have programs that have been established to incorporate students into a regular learning classroom, to a regular learning process, but do it in a collective manner. So they have partners and more students than just one. And so there may be situations where we're going to have students, if we're putting them back into the areas where they are originally, or where they're housed, where they're the only person who has a particular situation or need. And that, if we're talking about doing what's best for our students, I don't know that that sounds conducive to that opportunity. So I think there is still some need to be able to have particular programs that may have really specialized needs for folks working with those students to be still operational in some spaces. And I look to like the DHH students as an example, but I think there are more examples than just that within our district where we have created processes and ways to incorporate those students who have the have some specialized requirements or some specialized needs to be into a normal setting or into an educational setting.
I think we agree 100%. Board Member Craig, I may need to clarify that what is happening in our district right now is we're placing units not strategically, but just around what we feel might be available. And what we want to do is be more strategic about where new units, where new space, where new classrooms are being assigned, so that children moving forward don't have to travel across our district to get to a classroom that meets their needs.
Okay, and again, I think that if we're talking about making sure that we are developing and building certain units and spaces where we haven't already had things, or as we're looking at programming, I think that's one thing. And I want to make sure that's very clear to folks so we don't have that confusion. The other thing is, and it really gets into like athletics and other programming that we see at schools. Again, when I came onto the board, we were just now beginning the growth of middle school athletics. And to be quite honest, the inconsistency of having K6 versus K5 is not going to be helpful to that. And because we're going to have some students in a 6, 7, 8 who are either going to go with junior high or be having to come back to a K5 building or pre-K5 building to participate. I'm just wanting to make sure that we are doing that also. If we're going to have that discussion, that we're having that discussion in a broader fashion of what does that look like?
Remember, in addition to building out junior high athletics, we have had and operated with K-8 buildings, and we've also had a team that's done a great job of building out more elementary athletic opportunities. This will not lessen that.
I guess I'm thinking about this in a form or fashion that we have different levels of what an elementary student is, though. Because a kid who's at a 6, 7, 8 building is really more junior high than they are elementary now.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's a focus.
I don't think OSHA will allow a sixth grader, I could be wrong, to participate at a 7th or 8th grade.
But that gets to my point, is that where does that 6th grader participate after 5th grade?
We still have elementary athletics, right? We still
Yeah,
have.
but are we going to have a separate program for just the 6th grade at a school that's 6, 7, 8? Is my question.
One of the schools.
Because, but again, that is us transferring a student from one building to another just for them to participate, which is, again, part of the problem with my feelings on this is that we have these programs because the kids are in school. They're talking to each other. Part of athletics is not just that you go play the sport after school. Part of athletics is that you're with your friends all day long, that you're talking all day long, that you're part of these activities all day long. The reason why schools have a freshman team and have a junior varsity and varsity team is because the freshman team learned from the junior varsity and varsity, right? They are learning to grow. And that idea that we would just take a 6th grader and move them to another school after school to go play sports seems kind of more work than it necessarily needs to be done. I don't know, it seems that it saves us any dollars doing that. So, I mean, like, that's one of my, again, consistencies in how we are operating K through 6 versus K through 5. The two other things I want to just highlight really quickly was that I know one of the proposals that came from Woodford's school folks who came in was to adopt an idea of Woodford being an arts school and creating a second arts elementary school that could, again, be a feeder to SCPA. And I know that there's a community within that space that would love to have programming like that in our district. We don't really have other spaces that create something like that. I think that's true of also something that, like, I actually love the idea of building up Sailor Park and growing that program, but I also think there's a room and space to create some of those type of things at Sailor Park, because to be quite honest, when you're in Sailor Park, ain't much else near you to come back to, right? Like to travel around for. So I think that's an opportunity, again, potentially looking at that. The fourth and kind of final thing is, I wanted to really emphasize why I think things like the wrap are actually a great idea and why it could be within the same facility space. I think we have a lot of things we're actually already doing that are these wraparound services that folks don't know about, don't hear about, that we don't get a chance to talk about enough. And the fact that folks are doing it, I've been over to see the space and the facilities work they do for Project Connect, and the amount of stuff that's donated by our community partners in that space is tremendous. But it is realistically hard to get people through the city right now who need these services because of just the way our city is set up. That has nothing to do with our district. That has nothing to do with what we do as our 7 members of the board here, or what you do and your team does. That's the reality, that we have a city that's shaped wrong. We have a city that has built more people out to the outskirts and the edges of the city than the interior of the city who have kids who utilize the resources of our district. There's a reason why the population in the West End is what it is. There's a reason why the population in Over the Rhine is what it is. There's a reason why the population in Avondale, Bond Hill, Evanston, we can go on and on and on to our black neighborhoods that have been slowly being depopulated left and right of people with kids. And we saw this for a while on the West Side, where folks were moving kids out of Price Hill, and then we were moving folks into Price Hill, and then we were overloading folks. And that's why we now have Carson that has as many students as it does. That's why we now have West High that's bursting at the seams, because we moved a bunch of people into housing in an effort to get them out of the places that the city decided they wanted to take over and put new folks into. And I say all that to say, that's why the wrap is so important, to stay on a space for which it was an accessible route for many of those folks. Because a parent who's working downtown or working in our city who needs to pick up some resources for their kid can stop on a bus route, come pick up the stuff, continue on their journey, and keep it and have their day going. And so that's why I would love for us to really rethink bringing the wrap back to Rising Stars on Vine, because if we can do that and do the pre-K program, where then also parents could pick up resources as they pick up their children, we are talking about an opportunity to grow something, and instead of having to take spaces and turn them solely into one or the other. But I think that if folks get a chance to look at what's included in the wrap, these are resources that we have a number of community partners. It's also why the gentleman from the church here who came for Taft Elementary, that's why we have these partners that so mean so much to these students. We need to maintain them and grow them, and if we've been talking about doing that for the last year, we should be paying attention to when they say, I'm not going to go to another building to provide these services because it's not where I want it to be. Like if we're gonna lose those things, that may have a greater cost to us than the 2 or 3 students we might pick up for this. So I again think the wrap is a phenomenal thing, and I appreciated you bringing it to the table because it hasn't been brought in that way to us. And I would hope that we can find a way to still do it in a still manner that keeps it on an accessible path. But I think it also is something that doesn't necessarily need to be something we separate out a whole building for.
Other comments? Member Moffett.
So I just want to start at slide 42, because I want to understand, phase 2 is not just about the boundaries and all that other stuff. To Board Member Craig's point, it's 42, there you go. So it's about also increasing the focus at some of these schools that don't necessarily have movement. Is that right, Superintendent Murphy?
That's
Okay,
correct.
So adding automotive, cosmetology, and entrepreneurship programs to Woodward, that would be an addition. Public safety to Withrow, all of these things are in phase 2. Can you go to the next slide, Rob? Adding Strides classrooms, creating a welcome center there. I just wanted to get clarification that some of these are for schools that have no movement. SCPA doesn't have any movement, but you're talking about one start time for that school. That's in phase 2, right? Okay, can you go to slide 44? This is the wrap that Board Member Craig was talking about, just for the public. My question is, are we talking about could we also include adding maybe social service agencies or some other things that our students might need? We do have a huge population of our ESOL families, and I know you talked about a wrap being, I can't remember the 3 different locations, but are we also talking about including social service agency assistance in some of these as well?
Yeah, so when we talk about health services, mental health counseling, Medicaid services and access, yes.
Okay, can you go to slide 44, Rob? Okay, so we could, in essence, be that hub at some of these centers if students need to turn in paperwork for Medicaid assistance. That's what we're talking about with the wrap.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to get clarification, and that's still part of phase 2. If you could go to 48, or let's see. Okay, so 48 is talking about Gilligan Digital Academy. I had a question around there. I know we talked about, and I've been asking you questions around Dawn students and assuming those approximately 700 to 1,000 students, because I think there are students and we need to get them back. Is there a possibility of increasing Digital Academy here to accommodate those students, or could we possibly incorporate some of them, or at least look at incorporating some of them in some of our currently under-enrolled buildings? What would be, like, what's your potential? And I know it's thought right now.
Yeah, so I have a meeting with Dawn administration December 18th. There's also the possibility of, can we absorb their charter? I don't fully know the answer to that, but it's being researched. Some students will thrive in a school like Digital Academy. Other students will need that face-to-face. I need a teacher to help me out real time. So if there was a Dawn student who wanted to come back to CPS today, would we accept them? Absolutely. But we also, there are some other options that we want to look at as well.
Okay, so I just wanted to get clarification that will you be able to have, I know the meeting is the 18th, we're meeting on the 9th, but will you be able to kind of develop, you and your team, a skeletal plan of potentially where they could go if they wanted to come now? Like, there was a lot of them that need some assistance right now.
So the high school students could go to any of our high schools with the exception of SCPA, Walnut, Clark, Spencer. So they could go to West High today. They could go to Woodward today, Schroeder today, Withrow, Taft.
And I know people don't know, but we do have adult education. Because I do their graduation, I've done it 2 years in a row, and we have a night school, and we have GED, and we have adult education programming, so maybe potentially expand some of that.
We could talk with them, with Ms. Robbie Thomas, who runs that program, our Aspire program. If they wanted to get a GED, that's a possibility. If they still want a high school diploma, we could help them with that in that Aspire setting as well. To do that, they would have to withdraw from their high school.
So, but if Dawn doesn't exist, we could assist them with merging back?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then on 49, if you could go to slide 49, this is also part of phase 2, I'm assuming, and to Board Member Craig's point around sports, these are for new opportunities for our students under phase 2? Is that what you're talking about here?
New or adjusted, depending on what we currently have, what can we do differently?
Okay,
yes.
I got you. So I just wanted to clarify that this is still part of phase 2. And then last thing is on slide 50, centralized enrollment. I think we've heard, and Board Member Craig brought up a little bit as well about how some of the families are asking questions around, magnet status, enrollment, et cetera. Would this centralized enrollment proposal assist with some of that?
100%. So families with questions today around this can contact our customer care center. But moving forward, we would have the customer care center do this completely for us. Right now, families can go to a schoolhouse for enrollment, but what we are proposing is that we do it completely centrally moving forward.
And the last two things, the marketing has been an issue for our district for the past few years. And so I know that we've experienced some challenges this year. I think with regard to the RAP and all of these things, centralized enrollment, we need to, and the proposals that we're talking about, we need to have some increased marketing, consistent increased marketing for what the great things are that are going on in our schools, and that we are welcoming everybody. We didn't talk about a marketing plan here, but is there any proposal to do marketing different, more efficiently, better, or something?
So I met with someone last week who is willing to come on and work with us on our marketing plan. We have had some adjustments with that particular team. Nobody's fault, life happens. Sure. And waiting to iron out some things so that we can get our marketing plan going.
Okay, and then the last thing is the community asked, and I hear you, it sounds like, and these are my words, not theirs, this is the NAACP for sure, that there's a desire for a task force. My suggestion would be that we do form some community, NAACP, Urban League, we've talked about this and you've reached out as well, but can we also get some collective group together that specifically works on awareness, increasing awareness of what the needs are of the district, and then engagement and getting their feedback? And I know we've talked about it offline, and I know you've talked about it to individual board members, but I really think there's validity in formalizing that request. Not necessarily to demand that the district do anything, but to inform and educate the community around what our needs are and what their voices are too. Because this has been a consistent theme today that I've heard that I really think has some substance. So forming a community task force would be my preference. And lastly, when you bring this to us on Monday, there are parts of this that I just can't get with it at the timing. I just can't do it right now. But there are parts of it that I am absolutely supportive of. Are you going to bring this to us as a line item for us to vote on, or is it a package? My preference would be line item versus package.
Member Moffitt, I think that's a decision in part, as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, where the board members can advise us and the superintendent as to a package or total plan or whatever. And
Will we decide that today?
We won't decide every package, but we're gonna decide package or the whole thing, or are we using, there are things here that do not rise to the level of board decision. I mean, there are things here that the superintendent should be able to decide and do. And I think that should be the first division of effort, and based upon history and tradition, that those are administrative issues. The reconfiguring of schools, of course, that is a board level decision, but some of this other stuff is not, and nor should it be, and you don't want to establish it as precedent. But I think we won't get through all that today, but I think we'll be able to, communicating with the superintendent and the president and the vice president, we can kind of figure this out in the next few days based upon this discussion today, which has been very helpful.
So then, having said that, thank you for clarification. My preference would be that we have them line itemed and that the community understands how it's going to be voted before Monday, or at least we let them know this is how we're going to be voting, because I'm a little confused. And, as a package, there are some things, and I've shared this with you, there are some things that concern me, but there are some things I'm definitely supportive of. So I just think we could get it out, how we're going to vote for it, that'd be great.
So we want to try to make that decision or that format or what have you in the next couple of days, so that there's a reasonable amount of time for people would know how the vote is going to be going. Okay, that makes sense. Vice President?
And yes, I was just going to add to, my suggestion would definitely be to be a line item rather than just bringing a one set proposal and saying, hey, this is it. I would like to see line items as well, because as I stated before, there are things that I agree with and there are things that I do not agree with as well.
Could I add to that too, that part of that packaging might not be just the line item, because that was god awful what we had to do last year for the budget, and we wanted to avoid that if we could. But I think part of it too is probably administration and what have you, thinking in terms of year 2 or phase 2, phase 3. So some of that might be, we'll be voting on the things that are essential now, coming up in this particular budget, 26 or what have you. And then there's a delay regarding the third year or what have you. So I mean, I think that, and we haven't even touched the years beyond, which are talking about the renewals and the bond issues and what have you, let alone the sale of property, let alone renovations and new properties. But we wanted to wait for the treasurer to be here, and that'll happen also on December 9th, to talk about some of that, which is part of the 70-some slides you can see, but we didn't want to talk about that today.
And just to add, I'm going to say, sorry, I disagree in terms of it being presented to us as a line item, simply because I know we've done this before and I understand it was a very long task when we did it last year, but I think that this is very important, and if it takes doing it line by line item, that's something that we just have to do. So I just want to share that.
Mr. Craig?
And while I think all of this is very important, I think we should be giving you better direction. I would love to have voted on this before or even today, but I think I would certainly prefer to at least have some level of packaging to these things, because quite honestly, doing line by line defeats the whole point of the budget that was put forth to this, because line by line means you do one thing, and sure, it makes a whole lot of sense in this line by line voting part, but it realistically has a huge effect on how the budget's set up and what the effects of that will be. So I mean, even if it is smaller packages of information that we could then do an assessment on the budget, makes a lot more sense than individual schools each vote. But I really say that because the quite honest truth is, if you vote one school and then don't vote the other, and that means that those two were connected and part of the plan, you really haven't voted on anything. So like, I would almost prefer to see where there's little packages or little pockets that can be grouped together to be able to do that assessment would make a little bit more sense than just specifically like, we're gonna vote Hayes Porter, no, but we're gonna vote Rothenberg, yes. So then what happens, right? Like, it's stuff like that that doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you do line by line.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Vice President?
Thank you, Board Member Craig. And let me say, I don't mean specifically line item by line item, but yes, if there are particular schools like how you presented on the slides, if those 3 schools go within that, that's that package deal where you're explaining it to us. So let me take that back. No line by 100 line by items. Thank you.
Just to confuse matters even more, if I could, even if it was suggested to me by someone that, okay, why don't you have a package that says this is the new configuration for our high schools? That could be a package. Because it cuts across, but it would impact, but doesn't necessarily change something that might happen or not happen. I mean, that might be a way to, so this will take some serious time to think about it, but thanks for the information. Member Moffett, and then we'll go to Member Mapp.
So I'm a little confused. For instance, I support middle schools, but I'm very confused on my support of Clark. So I don't know how you all need to figure that out for me to support or not support. I guess that's figured out however you want to, but there are things that I support, there are things that I don't support. So if you package them together, you're going to probably get a no. So I don't know how that works, because I'm not going to, I'm not for Hayes Porter, I'm not for Rothenberg, I've said that. So I don't know if you want to make it a blanket thing, I don't know, but I am for the support things that are in phase 2, absolutely. I think the 42 to 50 is perfect for us. So I don't know exactly how that works.
Well, most people would be. I mean, those are the easy votes.
Well, those are the
Member
easy
Moffett.
votes, but those are the things that impact us in a different way, and I think people can get behind that. But quite frankly, some things, I just think we should have engaged better. And because we didn't, it doesn't have to be done immediately. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be done. Maybe you want to put a timeline on it, like say over 2 years. When you say year 2, that concerns me because that's a timeline. You can say phase 2 over 2 years or phase 2 over 3 years, that's different. So however it needs to be worded to get support, I'd like to.
Gotcha. To me, how we have to approach this in part is the scope of things of what we've committed to. Those 5 recommendations, let's say, or the resolution that's already been passed, or board policy about you can't send a kid, this is part of FMP, you can't send a kid to a lower ranked school. And that was board policy. I honestly don't know if that is still board policy, but it was very much adhered to during FMP and assignment. So there's lots to worry about. My other issue is that we have to make some decisions that save us money, folks. Or we're just kicking this down the road, deciding on stuff that we like versus the reality. I mean, the reality is we cannot have too small of schools. It's just the reality per student cost or whatever. So financial things have to impact, and I know everybody here is very preoccupied with that. Member Mapp.
So yes, so just a quick question. I know that some type of vote will be decided upon on Monday, right, on the 9th?
Yes, we're voting on Monday, yes.
Okay, so just trying to get clarity around what the community's involvement will look like. So would it be where the decision is made for certain things and then the community is able to add input after the decision has been made about what the implementation looks like? I'm just trying to get clarity around what that process entails, because we're saying that we're looking for community engagement. So will there be, obviously there won't be time before Monday, right? So just trying to get understanding around that.
That's a superintendent question, but I would answer it first by saying, of course, throughout this, as we had to live through phase 1, there was continuous implementation advisory and information being shared, and do this, don't do that. But the reality is, for the point that Mr. Craig mentioned last week and this week again, is that the rounds start for staff. So people have to know what schools exist or don't exist and in what format, or if they're configured with something, some other school or what have you. So those things, after the decision has to impact those. And so the implementation, how to do it, massage it, fix it, and tweak it, that we have proof positive that this administration's been willing to do some of that, unfortunately at great cost occasionally. But some of this has to be definitive. I mean, or we're in trouble. Mr. Crossett?
Yeah, I like the idea of packaging, and I just wanted to add, maybe you could have a couple scenarios of a package, like, in other words, maybe there's some choices around some things that we could make rather than having it be all or nothing on a package.
Thank you, Mr. Crossett. Any other comments before we move on? Or step back, whichever it is. Superintendent?
I just really want to make a comment. I'm not clear on the $200 million. And I don't know that I've ever said anything about $200 million for this, but I do want to make sure the board is clear that is not what we're proposing for phase 2 at all. So
The $200 million, and I'm glad you raised it. There were a number of things. One of the problems of being on the board and during public comment is the history and tradition and practice. Best practice is to hear the public and not necessarily engage. And I know that's frustrating for the public, but we would still be in the public session right now, listening and us arguing with one another, or you all. The 200 million, I think, was something that was said and improperly reported. It was said by, I think, probably one of us. And I think it initially referred to, and Mr. Burkhart's not here, but I believe the 200 million was about the facilities maintenance and what was it? What was the 200 for, Mr. Craig, Finance Chair?
The 200 million is phase 3, which is the $200 million renovations of property that were proposed, that was in the proposal that was given to us in our meeting in October.
Okay, and that didn't include the facilities plan?
Nope.
The 5 years?
Nope.
So that was just
It's
about?
2 buildings, one at Heinhold and one at Jacobs. There were about $200 million renovations that were the costs that were listed on the repairs.
Okay, well, I stand corrected because I thought part of that was the 5-year plan that we've been delaying. So it was the addition, and that didn't include the possible addition for Walnut Hills. And it didn't include some of the smaller additions that would probably be needed for some of the other schools, so it was just 2 buildings.
Yep.
And it was the Heinhold 30-some acres for a West Side high school, and the other was?
Jacob Center that was proposed to
Jacob
be
Center,
renovated.
okay, operations. And it didn't include the annex?
Nope, annex was another 20 million.
Okay, or probably more likely 50, because the 20 million didn't include any mitigation. Okay, yeah. And that's called the bond issues that we've been talking about. Recognizing the need for a high school on the west side and 30-some acres we've preserved over time with that in mind. And selling this building, selling our operations building on Reading, and relocating this building and all the buildings on Reading that are operations, our kitchen, our storage and whatever, in one place, which would be Jacobs up in off of Winton Road. So thanks, I'm glad you corrected me on that. I'm glad to know that. Other issues? All right, any last comments? Is there more that the superintendent would like to share? I can't imagine why you don't want to share any more. This has been kind of great, appreciate it a lot. That being the case, I think we're ready for some assignments, and I gave one assignment to the administration already, and that was to tell us a little bit more about the properties that we do own. And by the way, the mention of Aspire School is the second oldest adult education school in the United States that is part of a school district. So we're very proud of that, but it too needs to expand for some obvious reasons. So, and so that would be one of my assignments. Any other people have any other assignments for us? Mr. Craig?
Just one assignment, and it really is just so we can get a little clarity with regards to the impact that the ninth vote will have on the opening of the Magnet Lottery, specifically around the sibling preference, because that was slated, according to the website, to be decided on the 6th. And it's not going to be decided on the 6th, as far as I know, because no one's been able to pick a school. So just clarity on what the dates will be for those, the lottery itself, and how those things will be decided.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Other assignments? Member Moffett?
So I'll just formalize my assignment for the administration to research CPS sponsorship of charters, and then more information around our DON students. Additionally, I would like to have our lobbyists come, if they could, and talk to us about any updates around Senate Bill 295, if we could get that. And then I would also like to, I know we had some testing scores come out, so I'd like to get an update around that as well.
Are you talking about for the 9th, for the third grade
Well,
reading report?
it doesn't have to, yeah, if we could.
Okay. Anybody else for assignments? Hearing none regarding assignments, so I would take a motion and a second to adjourn, but I will make two announcements. Remember, you got today or yesterday the final draft of the brochure for the treasurer search. Please make any changes that you want and send those directly to Mr. that guy
Quinn.
from OSBA. Yeah, Quinn. And then also, we have scheduled a December 18th meeting. If needed, it could be business meeting. It had been a cow, or usually would have been a cow. On December 18th, I know it has been requested of us to have a fact-finding, at least on that day, a fact-finding regarding career tech, rules, regulations, and funding for SCPA on the 18th of December. So this is nothing that has to be noticed. It's not a public meeting as such. Fact-finding, we get to ask questions and the administration gets to answer, and we're not allowed to deliberate. So it's some of the best meetings we have, keeping us shut up and just getting answers from our professionals. So remember that for the 18th, Madam Superintendent. Anything else? I had a motion?
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
By acclamation. Thank you all for being here tonight, and